two screens going. Oh, it's not. Now it's not. Okay.
Okay, my bad.
So the last image that I was showing you is that bar right there at the top. So if you look at a longer stream, it's not that crazy, but it is pretty crazy over the course of that scale of time. And the scale of time here is thousands of years in the bottom. So if you're thinking of sets of thousands of years, it is a pretty drastic shift. Over the course of millions and millions, it's sort of, oh yeah, these things happen. But in any case, of course, for the scale of human experience and what humanity would have experienced, this is just absolutely catastrophic, right? If the temperatures were to drop and stay down like that for a while, that would change the world. And so this is what some people think caused it, and this is what we know, regardless of the cause, this is what happens. So the climate shifts, it happens around 12,900 to 13,000 years ago, that period where you have that deep change in temperature. Glaciers advance. Of course, species are going to be very different. In the Pacific, it's probably a lot more mellow. So what people in this part of the world might have faced would have been a lot less drastic. And of course, this book ended with the changes in the sea level, right? So sea level would have drastically dropped during that time when it was colder as there's more ice. Okay, so back to the what caused it part of the picture. So we have people who think it was due to cosmic impact and people who think it wasn't. Go ahead, check them. There's tons and tons and tons of research on it. I'll give you just the lowdown. So this is arguments against this younger Dryas impact hypothesis. I probably should put the word impact there. Some would say, oh, the chances of meteors hitting our planet are just infinitesimal. It's just so small. It couldn't have happened because it's just tiny. Statistically, it's very small. And hey, not everything died. Like there are other animals that seem to have made it through, even though you see on the other side of the argument, all this megafauna drops off the planet right at this time period. But those who would argue against an impact say, oh, other things seem to have survived. There's no smoking gun crater. If this big impact happens, shouldn't there be this really clear crater? And some of the other evidence, they'll quibble about the other details, and we don't really need to get into that. I kind of want to hurry up and get to what our wouldn't have to say. So this is the argument, generally speaking, for why cometary impact is said to be the cause. So all this megafauna go extinct, right? Whether you're talking about the woolly mammoths or those saber-toothed tigers, this giant sloths, they all go out right at this time period. There's this huge, the Clovis people in North America, they're goners. All of their traditional artifacts that are really abundant in the period before that, no longer there after this time period. There's this literally a black layer. If you were to dig down into the stratigraphy, you see that there's this black layer, this tremendous burning that happened. Like a whole lot of the planet was just in flames. There's iridium, which is this kind of element that we can only get through this sort of super high impact, super high temperature. So there's that presence, and these what they call hexagonal nanodiamonds. They're actually have this perfect crystalline structure that it's a beautiful hexagon. And these are in super high abundance right in that time period where impact would have occurred at the beginning of that younger Dryas phase. But what I want to focus on is the worldwide moʻolelo. So what is said around the world about the memory, of this time. So in Arabic traditions, there's this remembrance of stars falling from the sky and this tremendous noise and everyone trying to find shelter, absolute terror. If you want to go to a YouTube that's really cool, Randall Carlson, he has this story, this whole presentation on the origins of Halloween and how it's like this worldwide festival of the dead. Try to check them out. That's a pretty cool, cool YouTube to look at. It's on, it's in that after school series if you are familiar with that one. Anyway, check it. So I'm just pulling some slides from his presentation. Similarly, I'm pulling some slides from another presentation on Uncharted X, and this one is on myths and gods, if you guys want to check that one out. So Brazil, similar. Just going to jam through these. Oops. Nordic tales, similar. This one comes all the way from Zoroastrian times, so from Persia, places like that. And it's about this god Mithras. So in the Mithraic traditions, there's the slaying of a bull that's super important. And what's emblematic of these traditions is a particular slaying right at the shoulder of the bull and all of this blood spewing out. So this ritual of killing a bull and that specific act is part of the moʻolelo. Notice in this relief, the stars up at the top. Those are the Pleiades. Other traditions. So this is about Phaeton and Helios, Greek traditions, similar. So in all of these, there's a sense, oh, sorry, in this one, it is the metaphor is in their traditions linked to the sky and the stars and Taurus. Okay. In the Greek tradition, Phaeton, son of Helios, is allowed to try out the chariot of Helios, can't handle, the whole thing comes crashing down, earth burns. So other scholars, all the way from the 1800s have noticed this continuity of moʻolelo across the world, having to do with the Pleiades, it being sort of a beginning of the year marker for many cultures, this time of celebration, of often connection to those who have passed, and the whole of Taurus and Pleiades being central in that. This connection of the sky and those set of stars as being linked to this animal is super ancient. So this is in those, literally caves from that long ago, right? 14,000 BC. Long, really, really, really old. So this would have preceded that drop in temperature time. That image of just connecting it. They're not talking about cataclysm here. You notice that there's nothing falling from the sky here. They're just like, this is how we see our and then notice the Pleiades up there. And again, this is a connection that's been, through world history for a long time. There's the bull, there's the Pleiades, and it's right at the shoulder. Now, why this becomes important is that there's a torrid stream of meteors that regularly shows up. It's from the comet Enki that had broken apart. And it appears right in this time period when we would typically mark the rise of the Pleiades. Also coinciding with that Halloween Festival of the Dead period. Now, it appears to be coming from the Pleiades, just visually speaking, and they call that the radiant point, which means that in the night sky, even though it's not coming like as if it's coming literally from the Pleiades, when you look down a long street and everything starts to look like it's converging like that, it has that same effect. So that, in this case, this is actually the Leonids, different set, but so you have a sense of the actual sky. So here are the Pleiades, or what we would refer to as that. Trying to get a clear picture for you guys. Well, let me just maybe advance it. It's fine. You guys see the Pleiades and then the Taurus head part, right? So if all of this happened, what would Kupuna have remembered about it? Oh, yay, we're finally getting into more level stuff. Okay, now I know what I'm talking about better. So this is from a kupuna, Moana Uli, that is recorded by Fornander. So this is in the big, thick Fornander volumes. And so really, to me, this is really interesting that try to look at how Pele is being described. I know that a lot of you folks already have lots of moʻolelo Hawaii facilities, so I'm gonna just like pause and let you soak it in a little bit. It's a really weird connection of Pele and Kai. Looking at these lines, right? Kai, ki'i kealo Pele. Huh? That's different. Yeah, that it's a kaya Pele. Again, different. But if you think about what it might have looked like, right? Then these lines start making more sense. So Moana Uli is saying that, I was trying to get some information about Kaya Kahinali'i, that's that famous flood. So that's the way that it gets named in our traditions, right? Kaya Kahinali'i, this time of massive flood. And this is one of the mele that Moana Uli shares. And it's being described, right? So this kai that's on the back of Pele, like she's carrying this, she's bringing this. She's the one bringing this. Pele who's bringing this. And it's a kai that will, it's a, so ha'i, right? So this ha'i kualua, it's doubling. Ha'i kuakolu, it's tripling. So imagine the whole kai doubling, the whole kai tripling on the back of Pele. And kind of following the world in the other world traditions, right? Vava kaleo, it's this huge sound, right? It's a tremendous noise that's coming. And though it's been, where is it? Anybody see Wahi Konwa? Where's that? Oh, there. Wahi Kahonua. So in other translations, they talk about breaking or breaking through, like Wahi, right? But if you go Wahi with Kahonua, it's covering the ocean. I mean, the ocean is covering the Hono. So there's, yeah, a different way of thinking what's going on. So these traditions are found, I know we started the talk by mentioning the role of the Kumulipo. I'm going to actually get to the Kumulipo at the end. So these are some of the mele that, it's beyond the Kumulipo. It's actually in other traditions as well. This one, when I saw this, I was like, what? Haule mai pele, mai kalani mai. We don't have enough time to go through the whole thing, but I'm just going to like focus on the ones that like will really pop, right? What the heck? right? Doesn't Pele come from inside our honua? Not always, and not in this instance, right? Kahikili o kaʻolaʻi, kaualoku, o kauopoko. So rain and ola'i, all of this, earthquakes are happening all at the same time. Thunder, lightning, all of that. And again, this is all anchoring to Pele as the source of all of this. Okay, so it's a different kind of holomai Pele, and maybe it goes far beyond just the bounds of Hawaii. Okay, so some wonderings. Makahiki. So it's in that time period, right? And if you look at the traditions, if you look at, Malo has like a super long discussion about Makahiki. And you know, there's a good section in the Fornanda volumes from Kēhau Abad. And what they do talk about is that the Makahiki traditions have changed, and you kind of get the sense of, oh man, it's getting changed up. Our chiefs are doing some weird things in Makahiki, and it's about, you know, Ohau and stuff like that. But they speak to the fact that this is a super ancient tradition. They actually will call that out. The earliest traditions are really old. And it makes me wonder about how this might be connected, right? We know Lono and Kamapua'a, the notion of Kamapua'a's 8 eyes that come out like lasers. Yeah, I remember that in the traditions of Kamapua'a, right? Right, and that's like, where did we get that, right? Like, we don't have those kind of like there's no place else in our traditions that we have that sense of something of that sort in nature, as a metaphor. It's a very different kind of metaphor. And then when I saw this, kaya kahinali'i, this mele, it's like, oh, whoa. So notice we refer to this as kanuku or kapuahi, that opening of the oven, but nuku meaning, you know, snout, right? Not just a beak like a bird, but snout like a pig. And this cataclysmic hulihia law mele is all connected to lono, as opposed to Pele is not in this tradition, right? So this is a different metaphor, a completely different metaphor, not the Pele metaphor, and now they're looking at this as the metaphor. So this one really caught my eye. Elono ikahekili, elono ikawila. Those are really Kanye kinds of things, right? Wila and hekili, and yet lono is who's connected in this meaning to these things. And elono makahia lele. So you guys know the hia, right? That dart, right? Maka hia lele. Oh yeah. Now this mele about the flood is calling out to at the very end. Kawa'ahala wali'i, kamoku, kahi waihuai na moʻolelo a Pili. That first part, okay, think about a ba'a that's like a halo, like a moku in this time of flood. And what do you come to? Like, wow, what would that be like? That holds all of the ʻōlelo a Pili. And because maybe this gigantic va'a that's like a halo wasn't carrying animals, but something like maybe even genetic coding that's more like moʻolelo and pi'i. So anyway, okay, where am I going with this? We have a story of nu'u. And in our mo'olelo, now nu'u, if anybody's thinking this is just, oh, well, our kupuna, we're trying to like Christianize some of our mo'olelo. I don't think so, because nu'u appears in these really major genealogies that all of our chiefs have been long using as their right to rule kind of. I'm connected to all of these ancestors, one of whom is nu'u. And it's there, right there in the Kumuhonua and the Kumulipo genealogies and Pa'al's genealogy. It's a real dude. So nu'u, his wahine is Lilinoi. He's commanded to create this va'a halawali iokmuku, and everything's destroyed. He's still in the va'a with Lilinoi, 3 kids, 3 in-laws, and Kaneku and Lona enter and say, it's cool, come out, you'll be okay. And he finds himself in our traditions on the top of Mauna Kea. There's some other variations on it, maybe not Mauna Kea, he lives at Paiki Honua Kele, but the basic storyline is there. So now trying to connect that all up. So going backwards. So this va'a, so if we have our own sort of arc story, basically, our own Noah kind of story. What's in there? Well, I just found it super fascinating because some of what could possibly have been there might have been something a lot more sophisticated than physical animals. It could have actually been that hua'olelo pi'i, that genetic knowledge of what's needed to reproduce all of these animals. Yeah, so. Because that's really what chromosomes are, right? It's alphabetic coding. That's, yeah. Okay, moving on. So this is another mele that clarifies this memory of complete devastation. So it's we have many mele. It's not just these 1 or 2. Here's yet a different mele that's remembering this time where there's just tremendous death. Let you guys pause and take a look at that. And notice the presence of Vaiya, Kana Vai, which makes me wonder if it's Kamla Vai, like somebody's Vai, that this is, as opposed to rules and laws. And it ends in this line here, Okane Kawei Lepo, which again, it was like, interesting. So Vailepo is like how other cultures refer to going back to the dust, from dust to dust. For us, it was from Vailepo to Vailepo. So the traditions you'll see that being repeated. This Vailepo is this idea of creation from Vailepo, and then now metaphor to go back at the end of your life to Pele Oyeiko Vailepo. Okay. Oops. Oh, I think we have an extra line in there. Forget this yellow line that doesn't matter anything. Okay, so just wanted to kind of orient you guys to some of the stars that are in the picture too. So if we go past the mo'olelo and just look at the star names, what's in there just by virtue of the names themselves. We have Nakau. Okay, what does Kau mean? A dart. Darts. But it's interesting that it's also, so Aldebaran or Kaumaiku is also a cow. Like, why are they naming these things cow, right? And we hear about makali'i being nakao makali'i, like it's a baler of makali'i. We also hear it being like the net of makali'i nakoko a makali'i. But with these other mele put into the picture and these other names put in the picture, it may be that this is as valid a way of thinking about it as the others, right? Nakao a makali'i, the darts of makali'i, because we have cow, and cow. And then if you remember from the Mithraic, old traditions, right? This is like Zoroastrian, like way old. Remember what was flowing out of the shoulder? And that's the shoulder of it, right? If you guys remember how the stars are. Yeah. Nakoko. Some possibilities of interpretations. And then that's just, oops, this is just to remind us of that Mithraic tradition. There it is. Just so you guys have a sense of seeing it a little bit more. That's that nuku part, yeah. Okay. So even our star names kind of reflect that same tradition. We could have named the stars anything really, but there is that sense of these stars. So again, that ecliptical thing, right? Okay. Woo! Now we can get to the Kumulipo. So the Kumulipo, I'm just kind of, this is just by way of orienting us. So first, all of the first va or all of the different kinds of elements, plants, holoholona, all of those kinds of things. And then we're starting to get into, believe it or not, Kanaka as early as line 598. Okay. Haloa doesn't show up until 1734, 17 something. But truly, Kanaka, like for real, Kanaka, are that old. And we're looking in our own genealogies, right? We're saying we're connected to these other Kanaka that way the heck preceded Haloa, way earlier. And this is our own traditions, acknowledging these other lineages that are far more ancient. Okay, this is me geeking on the side. So those of you who might be kind of into this kind of thing, the role of sound, cymatics, if anybody's into cymatics, the role of sound in the creation of life, in the mix of what created life, know that there's a whole lot of interesting research around the role of sound. And kind of interestingly, hanau kapahu o moana liha. So liha are those egg-like things in the moana, and this ocean filled with egg-like things, energized by what comes first, sound, hanau kapahu. And what comes out of this, oh, you should also know, in the Kumulipo, right? It's not just, it's not linear in the sense that whatever happens here is happening before this. Sometimes they go back and forth like, oh, and let me remind you, oh, and let me sum up, you know, so it's not always going to be, so this is like a little bit of, oh, let me remind you, hanau kapahu, in this moana liha. And why I put this out in here is that this pu folo ili al imo lo'ipo, you'll see it coming up. So all these different lineages, that's kind of how I would interpret it. All these different lahui or lineages all come out of this moana liha. And just as to get yourself oriented, this is a time of la'i. Yeah, so we know these, oh, la'i okay, and this is when she's living at Meolani, kind of hoi hoi, she's actually you see that she's up in the heaven. Kind of very Haumea-like here. Continuing on, we have, so trying to get oriented. So, you know, when la'i la'i and ki'i and kane and all of that's happening. And so that's that, all of this era. So here, veliai kahonui na keiki, is keiki a la'i la'i. So veli is like sprouting. So I know we think of veli like veli and that kind of intense, scary kind of stuff. But veli is also to sprout and grow and have that sort of proliferation. Okay. And then this whole part ends here, and then it kicks up with all of these guys. Remember that line where there's, you see the kupo? So there's all these lines from 118 through 1173 or 1172, where you have these kupo, lahui kupo. And it's just, all the names are going to start with kupo. And then all the names are going to start with polo. And if there's a whole lahui of polo. And then there's a whole lahui of li'i and ali'i and mua and lo'i. And really po is just one. But if you remember, po was the last one too on the, before we got into it. So it loops, it kind of connects, and we end now of this portion with all of these lahui established. Okay, so these different lahui that came out of, where was it? Oops. That, right? This primordial stew of what's out there. And yeah, see how those are all those names? Okay. Oops. All right. Okay, this is a juicy one. If you remember nothing else, take a look at this. Again, because you guys, a lot of you guys know moʻolelo Hawaii. I'd rather you guys just take some time to look, and then here's a glossary. Go check them, go check it. This is what umipuma kahi. What are some things you folks have seen?
Oh, it's not a chicken.
Probably not. So if you think about the fact that, you know, we refer to Wakea, what other people might call Orion, right? What's the best picture to get you guys to see, where did it go? There's a version with all the moʻolelo Hawaii on top of this, but so from the back of Wakea, yeah, Hanau Kamoa, mai ke kua o Wakea. These darts that are coming from Makali'i, which is at the back of Wakea, as opposed to chickens being born out of Wakea's back. So we have pahu as in a stake or staff, stick or post. I didn't even know pahu were that, but you know, in doing this, right, you gotta muck about every single possibility. I was like, oh, what? Pahu is a stick, okay. And oh yeah, pahu, I remember that, right? So when we look at Hanau, pahu, hanau, pahu, all of these Yeah, which is, so you have this kind of physical object that looks like this, right? What does it look like? You think about the picture of the meteorites, right? And how they look. Okay, there's this stick-like appearance. The sound, right? All those big sounds. Haluku, nakulu. No way of the honua. The gathering of the waters, and mu also meaning an executioner, that kind of water. A different way of looking at what's here. But what struck me probably most about this in the end was the fact that, wow, the way when I thought about this, right? Oh, I think one part didn't get bolded, but the thing that I really want us to walk away with from this are these lines. Hanau po'ino, hanau po mai kai. That's a very telling line about how our Kupuna saw this. So from all of this and this incredible catechism that is po'ino loa, it is the birthing of po mai kai. And you know, we see that kind of kwana ike of this time. And you also, and yeah, because what's dying is like all of those lahui, they're all gone. Yeah, remember that kupolo li'ili ali'imuo lopo, all gone. And yet there is a po mai kai that can come from that. And you see that too in the next line. So this is the beginning of the next wa. And what you have is this emphasis of there's opu'u. It's all about, you know, everything is still there. Yeah, so opu'u is this budding, right? And this budding that is very fractal in its nature. That it's going to there is that seed and that bud that will continue life. And so from this cataclysmic era, the way our Kupuna saw it is that there is still po mai kai, and there is still in that opu'upu'u the ability for it to flourish again out of that fractal budding that will commence and did commence. And sure enough, many lines later, we have Wakea, who, yeah, Wakea inoho ya homea, ya papa, ya ho'o kalani, and halo. I'm sorry, hano or halo. Very much later comes a time when we arrive to these islands and our whole culture changes as we begin to have this sense of, and it's Polynesia in general, right? All of the different islands, we become a people that are connected to the cultivation of kalo, of the malama of haloa. We become a different people at this time, but we are connected to this much older tradition, these other lineages from very ancient times that are our kupuna as well. So there's some really, to me, some different ways of thinking about what really our kupuna left with us in all of these men. I'll pause there. Mahalo for letting me share that. This is my first time round of actually thinking through all this. Only, yeah, just been putting all of these slides together. So mahalo for bearing with me and trying to be able to articulate this.
So now I will do some Q&A. So if anyone has questions, also those of you on Zoom in the chat, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll pull them up and then Dr. Abad can answer them for you. Anyone have any questions? That's a good point. So how old are we?
have no idea. But we were thinking about line 1734 being when Haloa is born. And many, many lines prior being when Kanaka were present, right? Yeah, but this is really our kupuna, not in the Kumulipo, we do get a sense that, oh yeah, we come from, the Poele and all, yes, all of this cosmic swine that carries life, but it's a lot more, it's a lot more concrete, I guess, it's not just the ka'ina of life, it's also the ka'ina of these other traditions and histories and places and people that we're connected to. There are place names in here too that are like in these chants, like, oh, whoa, where's that? Like, never heard of that. And yeah, our origins, the story of our origins is definitely another whole talk, because there's of course all the migratory stuff that's really recent. Moʻolelo, all of those women, and all of those awesome peoples. But yeah, that's like yesterday time.
Can you talk a little bit about how you decided to look at some of those other oral traditions, like you're talking about the Zoroastrian and all that? How did you decide to find a way to connect that to our cosmology and the people?
I don't know. I think it's one of those kind of things. During COVID, there was just more. My family was here. Dear friends, they know that I was like totally geeking out on all these things that ended up converging, right? So geeking out, so looking at, wow, these megaliths started there, really. All these megaliths, how the heck, try to take a look, sexy woman, and oh my gosh, so many, but that's my favorite. They're unreal, like, who built these? It's nuts. We couldn't build these today if we tried. Not even close. And then like who are these people? And where did they come from? And then separate, there was this nagging thing. Go look at the Kumulipo. Go look at the Kumulipo. Okay, so bring the Kumulipo out. Okay, that's cool. It wasn't until I finally got to what involved, I'm like, wait a minute. These things are like connecting, right? But it was that convergence came afterwards. It was just a sense of, oh, I know that, I think anybody who's interested in our mo'olelo, at some point you realize I need to spend more time with the Kumulipo. And if you haven't, it's like we all should. Like, it's so rich, so rich. And so yeah, there was just a nagging sense of I should be looking there.
Have you looked at the other Kumulipo? The Kumulipo is just one. Is there other similarities if we did go into that, or not yet?
So the whole of what I would love to do, there's another parallel talk of our origins. Yeah, so if we look at like let's look at Kumuhonua some more. Like, there's much more that needs to be done there. And anybody want to do it together? We can play project together. I'd love to do that. Yeah, and then the other thing too is connecting it to all of the other mo'olelo of especially our Polynesian cousins, right? The person who did tremendous research in this was actually Fornander. There's volume, so he has actually 2 3-volume sets, right? There's the big fat ones, that's one set. And then there's another 3-volume set that he has. And in volume 1 of the skinnier one, he goes into a lot of that. And that's, the one that they put the Maui picture on Mutual Publishing has Maui's, that's volume 2. And for whatever reason, people aren't paying any attention to volume 1. The volume 1 is pretty cool. Yeah, so.
Okay, still trying to figure out what you said. I wonder if you could trace a line from your work and training as an archaeologist and methodologies and frameworks used there to what you're doing now, and I mean, if there is a line, or if it's just, okay, I'm gonna do something completely different. I mean,
There's a line, there's definitely a line.
I think I see it, but. If you could,
So, you know, one of the fundamental notions of, especially the branch of anthropology that's archaeology, is looking at the patterns of time and space, human behavior, activity, artifacts across time and space, and being able to explain them. And they're not always physical artifacts, right? Some of them are moʻolelo. So one of the tools that I'm most grateful for learning here at UH and through the people that so generously trained me was a sense of understanding how to tease out patterns and trends and hang on to them in a way that kind of like, okay, there's this little bit of data here, there's this little bit of data here, and then just constantly treating it much like a knife, so this whole netting of it, and just constantly trying to figure out, well, what is that netting? Here, similarly, right, you guys saw it, it's like there's so many different pieces, but they all end up providing some consistent clues that end up creating pattern, creating a sense of connectivity. So, and in relation to other work, right, so my dissertation work in the stuff where I normally play is in moʻolelo and moʻopuʻau from the time of Kamehameha prior to the time of the migratory chiefs, which is really a nice place because it's really like those are like for real kind history, really clear. And so I always felt really comfortable in there, and I always felt uncomfortable once you got beyond Mavekian time, because it's like, ooh, cosmogony genealogies, I don't know how to act, right? It's also and so this is my first time really playing in that space and saying, wait, no, can, like it's like it's a little more complicated in the brain, but can. And so yeah, just trying to find that, okay, what are those hints that our kupuna are leaving for us? And is there pattern? And maybe I'm making this all up. I mean, maybe I'm seeing pattern where there's not, right? But hopefully I'm not totally crazy, and that some of this makes some sense.
after your research, how would you categorize that in the higher field of achieve rank, or in the upper sector, or where would she fall and what ranking?
Well, she is a child of Homea, so I'll still, I still see, and then you saw right where the line was, noho, ya Homea, ya papa, ya kalani. So I still think those guys have like they're like the kua'ana, and yet the imagery and the metaphor that clearly our kupuna gravitated to was that and if the imagery is anything like you saw there, right, there's nothing else to call it but pele, right? That is a very specific kind of molten earth-like object, or molten gigantic stone. What else do you call it but pele? So I don't know, I mean, in terms of hierarchy, I know where the ʻāina is, right? Homea is still like mother of mothers of mothers. Yeah, I don't know if maybe that's a different way of thinking about it, but I don't know if our kupuna thought of them in that way. I wonder if sometimes my desire to like elevate Homea because our halo is so like Homea, and we love Homea, and maybe our tutus didn't think like that. Like, because if you're living in the midst of Puna, right, it's all about pele, contextual, yeah.
for others, for any homeowner or anything like that, who are interested in getting more into the Kumulipo, do you have recommended places to start, or like how, how to approach the Kumulipo in a way to start kind of digging into the deep data that you pulled out here?
Just, Mokavalu the heck out of it, because like any of, when you do research into any meta, right, start looking at the different ways, because once it got put down on paper, it was verbal to paper, right? So like when we saw like the cow example, even just that name, right? Is it like, ka o makali'i? Kau makali'i. We don't know, and like the pahu or pahu, or maybe both, right? In that example, both of them made sense. That explosive pahu or pahu, like a stick. But don't just assume that, oh yeah, I know the word pahu, that means box, like, so but when you read it, like, don't assume that the mana'o that moa, chicken, oh, okay, I got this line, I understand this. Waka is birthing a chicken from his back, I got it. And the can, so yeah.
Relevance of sound.
So if any of you guys, so the relevance of sound, and this is like on the scale of it's kind of getting out there, I guess I'll just put it up, it's getting out there, but cymatics is the science of sound, and like if you were to put a bunch of sand on this table, and you started making loud enough sounds, or just vibrating it with, so all of us singing at the same tone, loud enough, strongly enough, they're patterns that the sound will take. And these patterns are potentially the kinds of forms that you need in molecules and whatnot to then create more complexity that will lead to life.
Well, it's wave is energy.
Yeah.
Well, no, sounds are waves.
Sounds are waves, yes, thank you.
Like light waves, but it's a different frequency, so, yeah.
And some of this is like way out there, some of the theories about how these megalithic stones were moved involve sound. That it's sound frequency, that's the technology that might have been used by earlier versions of ourselves, that all those lineages that are no more, who maybe were in many ways technologically more advanced than us.
The thing to the law is also sound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow.
It's like a roar and make noise. The laws.
Yeah. Let me salva right in the chance. So yeah, sound played a pretty big role in not just our mo'olelo, but others too. So it's like, it might just have been the sound in two ways, right? Sound in that, like in that part of the Kumulipo where you're talking about that moana, and then sound in terms of that roar of what it would have been like to have Pele coming in like that. Thank you guys for the time.
Mahalo doing. Mahalo. Thank you for coming. We have Me'ai over here, so if you didn't get food, please get now. Take it before you leave, because I ain't got room in my fridge at home for that. So, but mahalo all for joining us together.